If I told you that I was going to get this BMW behind me to 500,000 miles, you probably wouldn't believe me. And the same is said again, what if I said I was going to get this M2 to 500,000 miles? You probably wouldn't believe that either. A lot of people say that BMWs are unreliable. And if you spent some time online, whether that be BMW forums or just general online activities, you probably would have seen people moaning about BMW reliability more than them actually praising it. But here's the thing, I don't think BMWs are actually unreliable, but I do think they are unforgiving cars. And I do think there is a massive difference between these two things. You see, an unreliable car fails no matter what you do to it. But an unforgiving car fails when you treat it badly, but it survives when you treat it well. And today I want to explain how I'm treating my BMW as if it has to survive 500,000 miles. And trust me, I'm not going to get it there. I won't have a car long enough. But if I treat it as if the car has to drive forever, it's going to last a lot longer than I actually need it to. I want you to think about something for just a second. Why is it that diesel BMWs, the 330d, the 535d, diesel X5s, are known for doing insane mileage? But petrol BMWs get this reputation for being fragile and unreliable. Same company, same engineers, and the same factory. So what is really going on here? Is it the engines, or is it something else completely different? Hold on to that question, because we're going to come back to it very shortly. We're just going to talk about diesel BMWs for just a second, because this context is very important. Let's take two of BMW's diesel engines, the M57 and the N57. Now these engines, they're not magical and they're not indestructible, but they are used differently. A lot of BMW engines spend the majority of their time at a lower RPM. They also have less heat and they're usually not driven as hard. They don't usually bounce off the limiter when the engine is cold. They don't usually floor it when the oil is cold. And most owners don't chase horsepower like they do on BMW petrol engines. And that alone massively changes how long an engine actually survives. And this part does matter. Most of the time, BMW engines don't die because of excessive power, but they do die to something else, and that is heat cycles over and over again. Not one big red line, not bouncing off the limiter, and not flooring it when it's cold. You see, heat cycles on an engine, they have to happen. It's inevitable. The engine gets hot when it's started and when it's driven, and then it cools down when it's parked up and it's not moving. These things have to happen. But there are other things, like driving the engine hard when the oil is cold, oil service intervals that BMW recommend, which are an absolute joke. We'll talk about that very shortly in the video. Let's bring this context to real life and talk about my M240i, because it's the car we can actually talk about today. And like most of BMW's 40i versions of their cars, it will come with the B58 engine. And the B58 already gets praised for its engine reliability. It's got a closed deck design, it's got a good oiling system, it's got a good combustion ratio. The whole design is pretty strong. But this engine didn't just fall out of the BMW factories on a crate ready to go. It was designed this way. It was designed to be strong. But the sad thing is, strength doesn't actually mean immunity. And that does suck, really. And the B58 engine, well, that will happily make power. It's very good at that. But it will only live a long life if you treat it like a precision machine, not a disposable one. And this is where a lot of BMW owners mess up. Let's talk about the warming up procedure on a BMW, because this is where half of the failures happen, in my opinion. Now, when you start a car, the coolant temperature, which is what cars usually project with the engine temperature, heats up a lot faster than oil. Now, you don't really need your coolant to be at a good operating temperature for the car to remain healthy. The oil, on the other hand, is thicker, it heats up a lot slower, and the oil is basically the blood of the engine. If this oil isn't warm when you drive the car hard, this is where big problems come from, because you're driving the car hard on cold oil, and cold oil doesn't lubricate things correctly, nowhere near as well as warm or hot oil. And those crucial components like your crankshaft, your cams, your turbo bearings, they rely on smooth and warm oil to lubricate everything correctly. Now, me personally, I have one simple rule when it comes to this. If the oil isn't up to temperature, the engine doesn't get a lot of load, it sees absolutely no boost until that oil is ready and up to temp, and the car is ready to go. And the sad part about this is where a lot of people aren't patient enough to wait before driving the car hard. This is one powerful sentence I live by on basically any car I've ever owned. And this sentence, it's super easy to remember. Coolant lies, oil doesn't. And if you have to remember one thing from this video, remember that. You might already be quite good at maintaining your BMW and you're doing your warm-up procedure, but there's another procedure which 99% of the time gets unnoticed. And this procedure is the cool down procedure on the engine. It's hardly talked about. And ironically, turbocharged cars actually suffer more damage from the afterdrive than the actual hard drive that they went through themselves. You see, if this engine is running and I go to shut it off after a hard drive, that oil flow stops immediately, but the heat doesn't. And I'm lucky enough to actually have a blown up B58 turbo to show you guys a little bit closer up. Now this is very simple. This part spins very fast, and obviously you need oil to lubricate that. This is an oil feed, or your oil outlet if you want to be scientifically correct here. Now we all know that a turbo is connected to the exhaust manifold, and with all those combustion cycles going on, that manifold and turbo get extremely hot. And once you shut that turbo off, which obviously shuts off when the engine stops running, that oil stops in the turbo. It stops moving, and that turbo is so hot. And all that heat from this turbo, it cooks the oil, and then that oil crystallizes, and then over time when you keep doing this, that bearing in this turbo will eventually fail, and that's a big problem. So what's the remedy to all this? Because obviously the turbo is always going to be really hot whenever you've had a drive. Well, the remedy is super simple. If you let the car idle for 30 seconds to a minute after you've had a hard drive, yes, the turbo is still spinning, but it's not spinning anywhere near as fast as it would be if you've just come and turned it off after a hard drive. And also, the engine is not making anywhere near as much heat as it would be on idle compared to if it was under crazy load. So the remedy is actually really simple. Let the car idle for 30 seconds to a minute, or you can do what I do, and after you've come back from a hard drive, just measure the oil on your car. It keeps the RPMs at about 1,000, and this way you've pretty much got your own BMW cool down system. This next part we're going to talk about is a little bit controversial, and the reason it's controversial is because BMW knows about this, and they do absolutely nothing about it. We all know that cars need an oil service, and they need oil services pretty regularly because, like I mentioned, the oil is basically the blood of the car. If the oil's bad, you're going to expect a whole load of problems with your car. BMW recommends on my M240i, for example, to have an oil change every 10,000 miles-ish. Now, in reality, that's not too bad, but here's where the problem actually lies. You see, BMW know we tune our cars, but in reality, we're not really meant to tune them, especially if the car has a warranty. But there is actually a dark truth to why BMW choose their oil intervals to be around 10,000 miles for each car. BMW have the oil change intervals around 10,000 miles for specific reasons. This is for emission stuff, Euro 6 regulations. There's a whole load of paperwork that BMW have to meet, which is why their oil intervals are around 10,000 miles. But that isn't the main reason. But BMW have a little bit of a dark secret to the reason they chose this number. You see, when we talked about heat in the engine, heat also deteriorates oil over time. And an oil's job is more than just lubricating the engine. Oil in itself takes a lot of stress from the engine as well. It deteriorates over time because the engine gets really hot, then really cold, then really hot and cold, for example. And whilst every car does have an oil filter to filter any bad particles out of that oil, the oil still goes black, as you would have noticed. If you put clean oil in, it's a golden colour, and then when you go to drain it, it can be this black sludge. BMW have a secret, and the secret really is that cars tend to fail out of warranty with these oil service intervals. And me personally, I don't really think this is just a coincidence. I think if you are doing your oil services every 10,000 miles, and then BMW are charging you upwards of £500 to do so at a main dealer, and then all of a sudden, once your car's out of warranty, you then start to develop issues on the car. I don't really think this is a coincidence. And I don't blame BMW for any of this. At the end of the day, BMW aren't evil, they're just a business. And all a business cares about is making money. And that's exactly what BMW are doing with this tactic. So here's the little thing. If you want an engine to last way longer than it was actually planned to last, then you have to maintain it differently. And this is where the N55 came in. People love to say the N55 is unreliable. And that the B58 in my M240i fixed everything. And it's the best engine BMW have ever made. But truthfully, I just think that's people being lazy. You see, the N55 was somewhat unreliable, and the B58 is slightly better. BMW evolved, they fixed new things, they saw the N55's weaknesses, and they improved it on the B58. And if you've been following the channel for a long time, you'll know that I used to own an N55 in my M235i, and I personally gave that car hell. I drove it hard, I took it on track, and I gave it a hard time. But here's what I did with it. I warmed it up before every drive, I cooled it down after every hard drive. I changed the oil regularly, I did it every 3,000 miles instead of every 10,000 miles like BMW said. If there were ever any issues, I fixed them straight away. And here's a real life example that I saw on a Facebook post the other day. And I'm not going to go out and share the video or share any names because that's unfair. But here's the deal. It was an N55 and it was posted on the forum that it had low oil. and it came up with the warning on the dash. The next couple of days, we saw that N55 doing donuts, and we all know the N55's weakness of oil starvation when it comes to doing donuts. Fast forward to about a week's time now, the engine has blown up. Why is that then? Why is that? Now, did that owner top up the oil when the car knew it was low on oil and told the owner to top it up? No. Was the owner doing donuts in the car with the engine on low oil? Yes. And did the engine blow up? Yes. Now, does it make sense? Do you see why this happened? And again, we can bring another engine into context here. We can talk about the S55. Now, the S55 is a massive improvement again from the N55, but it has its own weaknesses. The crank hub can be a common problem. Now, of course, I'm sure there are plenty of cars in Europe with the S55 engine, probably nearing 500k miles. There's probably some old guy who drives it like a granddad, who hasn't done his crank hub, who's nearing that mileage, but we just haven't seen it. And truthfully, you don't have to do the crank hub on the S55 platform to get that kind of mileage. But the crank hub is all down to how the driver drives the car. And this is the main core in the video. It's not how bad the engine is or how reliable the engine is. It's how the car is actually treated by the owner. Here's another crazy question to add to the mix. If tuned cars are supposedly not meant to last as long as stock ones, why are some tuned cars out there lasting way longer than stock ones? Tuning an engine doesn't actually kill the engine. A bad tune, we can argue, can be detrimental to the engine. Bad ignition timing, a pop and bang map. There's loads and loads of factors that we can factor into a bad tune. And I'm no professional expert on tuning an engine, but all I would say is a good tune doesn't actually damage an engine. And if you maintain the car as well, you'll be fine. So to answer that question from earlier about the diesel BMWs, well, congratulations on staying this far. Let's answer the question now. Diesel BMWs last because they naturally avoid the crazy activities that petrol engines get up to. They have a lot lower RPM. They make the torque and the power with less stress on the engine. They see different heat cycles completely. So it's not magic with these diesel engines, but it's how they're used. Preventative maintenance is another thing which I'll be doing to get my car to 500,000 miles. Now, what is preventative maintenance? Well, simply, preventative maintenance is you preventing a part on the car failing before it actually does. Seeing as we have a B58 here to look at today, let's talk about one of its issues. Now, one of the issues that is very common on the B58 is the PCV valve. Now, when this fails, it's a little rubber diaphragm that can split and it can wear. When it fails, you get some white smoke from the exhaust, oil burning, you'll also get a rough idle. There's loads of symptoms. But the crazy part is, the actual replacement part, a genuine BMW part, is like £16 or less than $20, which is crazy cheap. And in reality, it literally takes about 15 minutes to actually replace. It's so easy. With preventative maintenance, you're basically preventing that part from failing before it actually does. So in the case of the PCV valve, for the price of it, I'd buy one every 10,000 miles, I'd replace it, and then I know I'm good for say another 10,000 miles before it fails. It's no good waiting for that part to actually fail and then replacing it. Here is the mindset shift with this video today. Stop asking how much power can your car make and actually ask yourself how long can your car survive making that power. And that single question changes how you drive, modify, and look after a BMW. Here are some really easy bullet points to remember, and your car will last a lot longer than BMW want it to. Warm your oil and your car up properly. Cool your oil and your car down properly. Service it way more regularly than BMW actually tells you to. Respect the heat that the engine can make and damage your engine. And finally, replace those parts before they actually break and do damage to your engine. Preventative maintenance. So if you treat your BMW like it has to survive 500,000 miles, it probably will. Or it'll last long enough for you yourself in your ownership of the car to not see one single failure. BMWs aren't unreliable cars. They're just brutally honest cars. Treat them badly and they'll punish you with crazy expensive bills to replace the engine if it blows up. Treat them well and they'll reward you with an engine that will go for hundreds of thousands of miles. And once you understand that, they'll become some of the best cars that you'll ever own. And there we have it. That's the recap. That's how I'm going to try and get my car to survive to 500,000 miles. By driving it well, by doing maintenance, by doing preventative maintenance, by looking after it, by letting the car warm up, and just being an all-round good driver and not trashing the car like I'm trying to actually blow it up. So there we have it. Let me know. Am I going to get 500,000 miles out of this car, or is it going to blow up before I even see 100k on it? Let me know in the comment section. And if this video helped you out in any sort of way, then be sure to give it a thumbs up and leave any comments you have down below and I'll personally answer them. And apart from that, you can subscribe. We're trying to reach 4,000 subscribers before 2026 is here. So if you do want to do that, I'd really appreciate it. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching today. Bye for now.